Hi, guys. Welcome to our second episode, Success in the Queen City, where we are talking all things real estate, luxury real estate, authenticity, drive, entrepreneurship, starting businesses from the ground up, and nothing but success. My name is Liza Caminiti with Ivester Jackson, Christie's International Real Estate, and I am a luxury real estate agent here in the Charlotte market, and also the managing broker at our Charlotte office. I have the honor to have on my podcast today the owner of Ivester Jackson, Christie's International Real Estate, Reed Jackson, who is a favorite of mine, and I get to work alongside him and his wife, Lori Jackson, for many years now. I'm so excited to have Reed here because he has such an amazing insight, not only on the luxury market and Charlotte real estate market, but just anything to do with marketing, a forecast outlook on what the real estate market looks like. So I know Reed's going to have a lot of good insight on us. And Reed has built a business with Lori that is tremendous. And we are killing it here in the Charlotte, Lake Norman area and in the whole state of North Carolina. I will go ahead and let Reed take it from here and introduce himself.
Well, thanks, Liza. It's always fun to talk about real estate, and we've had a great run here in Charlotte working together. And so we've been very fortunate to work in North Carolina. The market's been, obviously fantastic and attracted a lot of people to the state. And I think we've done a great job putting together a great team that really services the area well and represents Christie's very well. And so I think that's, been had a lot of impact on our success.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very funny story. So I started working with Reed and Lori, I think 8 years ago now. And I was so nervous to meet them for the first time when I was meeting with them, because they were just like the real estate god and goddess. And I was so nervous in my car, and Reed Jackson pulled up, and I looked in my rearview mirror and I could see him walking into the office for us to meet. And I was like, and so nervous. And then I walked into our Cornelius office, into the boardroom to sit and talk with them. And within the first 10 minutes of meeting you guys, I knew that I had met my family. They were my people. And working for you guys has been so easy because you guys pour your hearts and souls into just letting us as agents spread our wings, giving us the tools to help us be successful. And so it's such an honor to have you here. So thank you so much. So I want to touch on, obviously, I know going back and starting your career path started in marketing with a corporate company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I went to school at Michigan State, and I got out of school in the 80s. I hate to say it, but my major was actually advertising, but I had a minor in accounting, and basically realized that academically I wasn't going to be able to cut it in accounting, and so I switched my major to advertising, and really started to kind of tap the creative side of kind of how I looked at business. And then I was really fortunate to go to work for Cintas Corporation out of college. And they moved me. They had just gone public, rapidly growing, young company with a lot of opportunity. And so one of the things that was really great for me was I was able to move into a lot of different capacities with them. So I had the accounting and advertising background, but I also got into operations. I helped them with mergers and acquisitions, integration and growth, and opening up new markets. And I actually started in Winston-Salem, and so ended up staying in North Carolina pretty much for most of my career, and was really fortunate to have a great education from them. It was better than any master's I could have gotten.
Yeah, it's good. A big company. It's a great company.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was interesting because I got to scratch the advertising itch enough. They at that time really involved people that had certain levels of expertise up at the corporate office. And so they were flying me up to sit on the executive marketing committee with the VP of marketing and the chairman and the CEO. So they had about 6 people from the field operations that all had kind of stronger advertising and marketing backgrounds. So I had actually started their NASCAR advertising program here in the North Carolina area because they were automotive aftermarket at that time was kind of their primary business. And so NASCAR obviously had a really nice, you know, ability to tap into that segment of their fan base. And so we started that program with them, and we did a lot of direct mail. We did some TV advertising, and that later spread to them moving into the NFL and some other, because they partnered with the Gibbs organization here in North Carolina. And so really great experience for me to be involved at that level. But they at a certain point wanted me to move back and take a marketing job up in Cincinnati. And I just didn't, Lori and I had just met, and we were getting ready to have our first kid, and I'd done 15 years with them, and we decided to leave and, eventually started the real estate business after I got my license. And Lori had been a really successful agent for several years. And so we kind of worked together to start out, and I was selling real estate alongside of her and learning that business. So it's been a fun run.
Yeah. So that's when Lori was Miss Dilworth, pretty much, right? It
Yeah,
was doing more of a real estate down in this Charlotte area.
yeah. And then she, moved to the lake, and I was living up at Lake Norman. And so, her business at Lake Norman was really progressing. She was working for a small boutique brokerage that unfortunately her older sister ran, and her older sister had passed away after a couple of years of doing that. So Lori went over to a big national brand right as I was leaving my corporate job. And so, we kind of had the thought of expanding and doing something on our own. Lake Norman was really growing at that time, and the luxury market was emerging. And so we were actually getting people who would ask us for a better, more upscale approach to marketing their homes than that big national brand was able to present at the time. And so we thought, what are we doing this for with a national brand that doesn't really want us to brand in a luxury way? And so that's where my advertising background kind of kicked in. And so we went and had a professional agency develop all of the Ivester Jackson marketing materials that we use to this day. The brand marks they designed and kind of original messaging has aged extremely well. Mm-hmm. And so, we started out as Ivester Jackson with the big box brand, and then left to form our own business and started out with about 5 agents. So
wow,
kind of a fun start.
Yeah, it's amazing because everybody always asks me, like, where's the Ivester Jackson come from?
Right.
And then we tell the story, and then obviously we say that Lake Norman should be called Lake Lori.
Yeah.
She dominates all of Lake Norman. So obviously, I know that fast forwarding, you guys, both of you, no matter what you do, you're successful at. You touch things, it turns to gold. So I'm sure that Ivester Jackson progressed quickly. When did you start to feel that it was necessary to then join with a bigger national, worldwide, recognized brand? Because I know there was multiple big brands after you guys.
Yeah, early 2000s, we were out on our own, and we were starting to do a lot of business at Lake Norman at the luxury level. And Lake Norman was really just starting to emerge as a destination, in the mid-Atlantic states. And so, if we did lose a client back then, it was because they were reading about investors coming from Europe and China and other areas of the United States. And back then in Charlotte and the Lake Norman area, if you had a house that was over $2 million, it would take you a year, sometimes 2 years to sell the property. And so, keeping that client happy and being able to present to them that you were doing the things that were attracting the widest audience were the keys to keeping that client happy. And so about 2009, really the 2 big luxury brands globally both came after us because the average deal size at Lake Norman was starting to push up towards $1 million and over. And so, we talked about it between the 2 of us, and at that point we'd grown to about 15 agents, and and we evaluated both of those brands. We felt Christie's was extremely entrepreneurial, and I think that was kind of our background, just warming up to that philosophy. And so Lori and I both come from families where, our parents had their own businesses. And so I think there's a real strong entrepreneurial streak in both of us. And so we just gravitated more to the Christie's brand and ended up ultimately doing the deal in about 2013. So we're in year 14 now, and haven't looked back. It was phenomenal. So
Yeah, it's such a wonderful brand to be a part of. Not only just the Ivester Jackson reputation you guys have built in the area, but there's our Christie's brand, and walking into listing appointments in rooms and representing that brand and talking about it and talking about you guys it's a really nice feeling because everybody has such amazing things to say about both of you.
Well, thanks. I think, one of the things that's always been great for us and kind of what helped us gravitate towards Christie's is there's a lot of really successful boutique, locally owned brokerages that are hyper local to their markets and plugged in. John R. Wood down in Naples, Florida is one of the established great family brands, but yet, they've affiliated with Christie's to expand their reach and to help provide their agents with the best tools. And so I think that's been kind of the thing that has attracted us to the network over the years is that ability to combine both. We're still independently owned, and so we call the shots operationally in our local markets, and we're actually different from market to market. We're a little bit different at the coast than we are up in Highlands or than we are here in Charlotte versus Lake Norman. We kind of let each local company develop and kind of have its own personality, but yet we operate under the same envelope in terms of branding, and we have, fairly strict branding guidelines and marketing messaging, but yet we allow a lot of operational independence at the agent level.
Absolutely. That's goes back to me saying how you guys just give us the ability to spread our wings and supply us with marketing materials that blow everything else away that people are seeing. So it's really a nice feeling. So you've obviously now touched on coast, mountains. So giving the audience that inclination that we are all over the state of North Carolina. So when you first started and you guys affiliated with Christie's, I know you obviously had the Cornelius office, and then the Charlotte office was next to open. At that time, were you having goals in your mind to basically have a footprint across the whole state of North Carolina?
Not really that expansive. I think, because of my background in the corporate world, I had done some geographic expansion for Cintas. And so I was comfortable with it. I knew you had to have systems for training and profiling people that you were going to hire to maintain the culture of the business. But I think, back then I was selling actively, pretty aggressively, and so was Lori. And it was interesting. I remember the first call we ever got in Charlotte, the most expensive home in Charlotte was listed in Moorcroft Estates. And the owner, saw our press release that we were opening in Charlotte and picked up the phone and called us and said, I'm not sure our buyer's going to be local. We think they may come from out of state, and we'd like to hear more about the Christie's brand. And that story could be retold by, myself or anybody that's worked under this brand over the last, 10 to 15 years. It just opens doors and creates that reach out from that level client who knows that they need, white glove service and maximum exposure to get their house sold.
Absolutely. I mean, I am a living proof of what the brand has done for me. I mean, obviously my drive and my work ethic play a part in that, and building relationships along the way. But it's just the ability to double my business every year since I've been with you guys and representing the brand is no doubt, been a huge, huge contribution to what I've been able to do.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the things that's hard to convey sometimes to clients and sometimes to agents even that are thinking about joining us is what goes on behind the curtain, what makes the phone ring, what kind of reach out you get from people because of their perception that you're able to reach, the widest range of affluent clients. And at the end of the day, we sell luxury properties. And so, being able to optimize the audience for a house or a property is pretty much the name of the game.
Mm.
So I think that's always been an important facet of the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we like to always stress to our agents, and I stress it so heavily to my agents here in Charlotte. Luxury is not a price point;
Yeah.
it's service we provide,
Right.
and so being able to give that same marketing and service to our clients that are even at 1 million or 1.5 million, whatever it may be, is really nice. It's just presenting the home in the best way and best fashion and offering that concierge level of service.
Yeah. And our expansion, I think, has been, from somebody outside, the business. I think they would probably look at it like it was kind of a typical geographic expansion. But we've really based that on opportunities to partner with people we knew would be cultural fits. And so, a lot of the time we'll move into a market because of who we're able to move in with. And sometimes that's a relationship that we already have with one of our agents, and maybe they have another agent that's a friend or a relative that lives in Wilmington or is up in the high country or wherever it may be. And those people tend to be great fits for us because they're already hearing good things from our in-house crew. And so I would say probably almost all of our geographic expansion has come that way, where it's been, a relationship. And so we won't really move into a market without having that type of cultural fit that we've identified. So
Mhm.
that's been what has driven our expansion, really.
Absolutely. I think it's a much more organic way to approach it all,
Yep.
for sure. So, with the expansion, obviously we're, mountains, we're coast, just open Bald Head. Um, I know Raleigh's the radar.
Yeah, it's one of those places where we just haven't had the right relationship develop yet, and I think it's on the radar. I think there's a possibility we could do that. We we've had success in pretty much every pocket of affluence in the state. And I think we also have built just this incredibly talented crew. And so I think one of the things that has always been my job, and I learned this at the corporate level, is you're constantly kind of playing three-dimensional chess, and you have to be thinking about what the next move on the chessboard is. And
Mm.
and a lot of that when you're growing is personnel related. It's who's the person who can step into the next area of responsibility that you're going to need somebody to fill because you're growing and you're creating other opportunities. And so I think that's a really important facet of being able to identify people who have talent. And, we really try to groom from within. And we do that on the agent side. Most of our managing brokers are all people who started out selling for us like you did.
Mhm.
And I think on the staff side, we've always tried to promote from within. I think it attracts people who want to work in a growth environment as well. So,
Yeah, and I think what I really love about you and Lori is it's not a, hey, let's fill the room with heads. It's quality over quantity. And obviously we have such an amazing culture across the board within Ivester Jackson and within the whole Christie's network. I mean, such a down to earth, successful, just collaborative group of people. But it's nice because by doing that and you guys having that attitude, it allows you to pour in to people so that people don't get, overlooked. When there's too many rooms, too many heads in that room, it's somebody's missing out there, and getting
right,
the attention that they need,
right,
or, getting the direction that they may need. Not everybody is driven as others, and that's okay. But it's, what they say, you're only strong as your leaders.
right.
So if your leaders are strong, then the rest of the company is going to thrive. I think it's so awesome. Like you open up Luxury Home Magazine every edition, and it's like our agents in our company are 75% of that magazine every time. because we're just dominating the luxury market, and all the wins that our listings have, record breaking sales or this or that. I mean, I've had many of those with you guys. It's just such a neat thing, and I know it attracts a lot of attention for the brand, which is very nice. So we'll touch on a little more like family. Obviously, both you and I now have the honor of our children being in the business. I don't think they had a choice. Julian, obviously his father, me, we're both, real estate driven. You and Lori, both real estate driven. So I know Jordan is running our commercial division. Matt just completed his license. So I'm sure the vision for them is obviously all things real estate for their future.
It's pretty funny because, growing up, those guys didn't always express an interest in it. In fact,
No.
I think if they found it extremely annoying.
Yeah.
And as I would bet Julian probably could relate to, it's just, it also, I think, becomes attractive to them as they get further into their careers and they start thinking about, what they really want to do. I think, like with my sons, they have different talents and different orientations. Jordan was a finance major. Matt's really strong on the creative side. And so, it was nice, Jordan joined us right at the time we were starting to expand commercially. And we really needed somebody who could help us with a finance background. Like we just had a development that we landed in North Carolina that's about a $200 million project. And we were able to give him to the developer for about 3 months. And all he did was run pro formas for them with different scenarios on what lots might sell for and what would happen if it went up 10% or 15% or 20% over 3-year projections. And, being able to have the luxury to provide not only that, but our real estate expertise on the marketing side really helps us in situations like that. And so, so that's an area that he's done well in. And I think Matt is kind of more traditional real estate, residential real estate. He really enjoys building. And I think there's probably going to be, we've done some infill projects with him. So I think there's probably going to be some of that side that starts to emerge with him. So it's fun. But, we all have separate roles. Lori is, one of the top agents in the state and busy with record-setting luxury clients. And I'm out operating our offices across the state and helping agents with strategy and analytics and things that they need to do their jobs well. So we all kind of have different things going on, which is fun.
Yeah, it is. It's very neat. I'd love to hear that you guys are heading in that building direction. That was a kind of a goal for me and Julian, just because I'm dying to tap in again to my whole interior design background too. But it's for me too, it's been such an honor, and I will go back to the brand and the marketing, assisting with all of this, is to work with the builders I've had the opportunity and honor to work with in Charlotte is unbelievable. I mean, if you would have told me 9 years ago getting, into real estate that I would have had this opportunity, I would have said, you're crazy. And so it's allowing me to do some interior design stuff, which is really nice. And I love that progression, seeing things coming up out of the ground. But I go back to what we offer as a company to a builder or developer from A to Z, and just making that such a stress-free situation for them is great because of our in-house marketing team. And it's far beyond anything that anybody else is doing for them. So I think we have a big future ahead of us with working with builders for sure, and developments.
Yep. That's definitely, one of our points of emphasis and started a couple of years ago. I think it's just a natural marriage for us with the fact that we have a pretty high-end affluent clientele base. They invest in a lot of things. They tend to get into, office buildings and other real estate holdings and developments, and, being able to bring the full turnkey package to a developer. We can put the Christie's brand on their development, which instantly elevates it from a quality standpoint. But yet we have a really talented in-house creative team. We also can do financial pro formas and of course staff it with, the best luxury agents in the area. So to me, it's a great solution for a developer who is of a certain size and probably, one that's putting luxury product together and out there. So that we're really excited about for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So we know, I joke around about your long emails that you send us that you probably type up in like 10 minutes with all of your brainiac market data and everything. In your opinion, what is your forecasted view of what the Charlotte market is going to continue to look like and do over the coming years?
Yeah, so I think it's if you look at the evolution of real estate markets that have been growth markets, they tend to have different stages, and so we're starting to become a much more established, nationally known real estate destination, and for luxury buyers in particular. I think the financial industry here is going to continue to attract high paying jobs. I think, certainly AI is going to be interesting to watch how that evolves. But I think the things that make North Carolina, one of the top inbound migration areas in terms of shifts in population in the United States, I think that's going to continue for the foreseeable future. We have great weather. We have dynamic cities. I think we are very attractive to young professionals who are getting out of college. I think that attracts their families come down and visit, and they decide they want to move. So I think we're kind of midway through that. I had read that between 2023 and 2030, about 30 million people were going to move to the Sun Belt. So I think we're about midway through that. I think that'll continue afterwards. I do think that our pricing in the higher demand areas is going to start to taper a little bit in terms of affordability at certain price points. So I think that part of the market is maturing a little bit in Charlotte and at Lake Norman. I think still high demand and still relatively affordable compared to major markets. But I do think that piece is starting to mature a little bit for sure.
Yeah, I feel like I'm noticing more people are starting to now come here from some of our feeder markets that maybe got a little more quiet. And I've even been reading a lot of, posts and data and stuff. And it seems like we're really getting put back in the news again. Like we were out and then it kind of, when Charlotte got put a little quiet, almost got to put time out a little bit.
Right.
And now we're just back out there, top 2, top 4 cities to move to. The neat thing is all the data is showing that our pricing is still continuing to rise. And obviously you and I both know, and I wish I could knock on wood when I say this, but even when some of our sister, offices in different cities around us were slow, we were still thriving here in Charlotte.
Right.
And so I've always said that. And I tell my clients, if I had a crystal ball, I'd be a billionaire and flying around on a private plane and own an island probably. But I don't have a crystal ball, but I think Charlotte is so insulated and so much in a bubble because the growth is going to continue to happen here. There's just too many great things about the city that people and families and businesses love. And I mean, we're getting more businesses that are moving here. So I really don't foresee Charlotte. I think even if, the whole, area or this East Coast would start to drop, I just think Charlotte's going to still continue to rise. I also firmly believe, and I love Florida. Florida has my heart. Love the state of Florida. But I think it's becoming so attractive and so many people are moving there as they did during COVID. And then we've now seen an influx of people that moved there during COVID now moving here. And I think this influx that they're getting now, we're going to probably get some of those people to come here because it just gets too overpopulated.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and I think, North Carolina in general, I see it across the entire state now because I'm in all the markets. And I think in general, still extremely popular. It's interesting to me when people get hung up on the price that they're paying for a house right now. And if you just historically kind of reframe that discussion to, if you're not trying to flip out of the house in the next 12 months and your objective is to be in it for 5 to 10 years. If you look at our track record over the last 20 years, it's pretty strong in terms of, what people have generated in terms of returns. And I think the atmosphere and the environment is going to continue to generate those kind of returns for the next 10 to 20. So, I think it's a pretty safe place to invest in real estate.
Yeah, for sure. There's still a lot of homes that are, older homes that can be torn down. There's so much development that can still come. Just wish we could start building some luxury condo buildings that have amenities and pools. And we are building these beautiful apartment buildings that are rentals. And I just think our market is really calling for a nice luxury condo building. So maybe that needs to be our next project.
Yeah, I think there's some things like that starting to percolate. So
Yeah.
I think we'll see a little bit more of that, especially with the apartment market, being a little bit harder for an investment fund to flip out of and that kind of thing. So I think we'll probably start seeing a little bit more of that type of development on those types of parcels.
Yeah. And we still have so many areas of Charlotte that can emerge. Just looking, obviously, I live in close to the South End area, and just seeing that migration of development coming up South Boulevard. And I remember before I had moved here, and my brother-in-law was living here. And so I was traveling to Charlotte to visit a lot. And we drove up South Boulevard to see the fireworks in downtown Charlotte, which I called it downtown, and I learned it was uptown when I moved here. And I came down South Boulevard, I'm like, "Man, what's all this industrial stuff that's so close to the town?" And now that whole area is just blown up. It's neat, and just being a part of all that growth since I've been here in 12 years has been awesome.
Yeah, one of the things I've really enjoyed doing, and this came out of COVID, as you remember when COVID hit, we had this huge flurry and people were buying up everything. And we ran out of inventory in the real high demand areas. And so people started looking out into the more rural counties. And one of the things that grew out of that was I kind of saw the need for an emerging market report
Mhm.
and piece of content for our buyers coming in from out of state. And so we've continued doing that. And it's been really interesting to take 5-year snapshots of how, money has migrated into places like Lancaster County, and we're starting to see it up at Lake Hickory, from Lake Norman, where just the natural spillover from the higher demand, higher priced markets is leading to more affluent properties,
Mm.
emerging into those areas, those emerging market areas. And so that's one of and I think that's also an example of kind of how we operate here internally. Like we're doing things like that to help educate our clients. And I don't think everybody in the marketplace is doing that. And I think that's one of those things behind the curtain that an agent doesn't really see if they're not, behind the curtain. So I think those are the things that help them with clients.
Absolutely. It's when I go and meet clients or I get a phone call from somebody and they list out all the places that they've seen me. And at a company level, the amount of marketing that we push out is phenomenal. It's the brand, the name constantly in people's faces, no matter what it is across the board. And I know you're such a firm believer on agents touching clients and future clients in every single way, postcards, magazine, whatever it may be. So I guess let's maybe tap into agents.
Mhm.
You always have the best advice for agents and what they need to be doing. And you're very good at delivering the message to the agents. So if there was, any advice or an agent starting out, what advice would you give that person today?
Well, I think it's changed, but I don't think it's changed that much. I think first and foremost, you have to go into it with an entrepreneurial mindset. I think, being a real estate agent, you're in your own business. You're also affiliated with a brokerage that can provide you with a lot of tools. But, most people that are in real estate are on 100% commission. They get up every morning and they have to go out and make a living. And so I think looking at it and taking ownership of kind of what your daily activities are and how you decide to market. I think the other thing that's really important mentally is you have to play the long game. I said when we first opened up the Charlotte office and we got the call from the most expensive home in Charlotte, I remember that night going home to my wife and saying, I'd take that listing for free.
Mm.
And the reason I said that was because I knew how important and how visible that listing was for our market. And I wasn't concerned about whether or not I was going to make money on it. I just knew what it was going to do for our business. And I think agents have to be in their markets and focused on long term building value, creating a reputation that you're a great resource. Consistency of marketing is another thing that goes along with that, playing the long game. You have to be willing to reinvest in your business and not so much focused on how much commission you can make on that particular deal. I think the agents that look at it entrepreneurially and with a long-term view over 5-10 years, I'm going to build something significant. I think those are the agents that do that they approach the business that way. And so that's one of the things we try to teach is, here's repetitive touch points and marketing that you have to engage in to stay top of mind. Today, it's a cluttered advertising world. People get hit with some insane thing like 5,000 images a day. And, you have to be top of mind to stay relevant with people. And so I think that's where that reinvesting and playing the long game goes.
100%. I love how you put that. You have to look at the glass half full, not half empty.
Right.
And so many agents, reach out to me and ask me, how are you building your business? Like, what are you doing? And I tell them, I wish I could tell you what the secret sauce is, but there's no secret sauce. Like you said, you have to have a plan. You have to execute daily. If you get knocked back 100 steps, you got to come back up 500 steps forward. And it's very difficult for agents to understand that. And it's a lot of money. You have to spend money to make money. Right. And setting yourself apart in this business, 100% comes down to your marketing. Right. It's in I mean, building the relationships, that can be a tough thing too. Obviously, I moved here coming from a big city like Miami thinking, oh, Charlotte's a small town. Well, it wasn't. I got knocked down to my face and had to really go, whoa. And so to be where I am today is a really big accomplishment, because most would have given up for sure. But I just didn't give up. And I think, the marketing and the branding and the relationship building and the consistent drive and, going above and beyond for your clients is crucial. It really is, because everybody's doing the same thing. You get innovative and you invent a new video and you do something, and then the next day you see somebody's copying you and doing exactly what you did. Right. Even though copycat's supposed to be a form of flattery, but it's tough because it's, every day I'm trying to think of new things to continue to do and guide our agents to do. And I tell them, you can do as I do, but I'm not perfect, but it just, what I'm doing is working for me.
Yeah, I think one of the things I learned in my corporate career, and that was a fast-growing company that, it's been one of the best stocks you could own in the last 30 years. And part of the culture there was execute and innovate. And if you didn't have 75 things on your to-do list that you were churning through, you weren't going to last there. And so, that mentality has kind of been ingrained in me. And so I kind of look at our business that way and always have, that there's almost a paranoia that if you're not moving that fast through new things, that somebody else might be. Mm. And I think if you're doing that, you're really hard to compete with. And I think you eventually build things that are tough to compete with. And so I think that whole, spirit of innovation and wanting to learn and being curious and implementing and trying things, and you're going to fail. I mean, we've had failures, spectacular failures at times, but we've also had, phenomenal successes that have far outweighed that. And so, Lori, I think, has the same mentality. She's been in the business a long time. She's been through multiple recessions, and she kind of has that long-term view, stay the course, execute, out-innovate your competitors, and constantly be, looking at new things. And I think if you do those things, you're going to be successful and you're going to be hard to compete with.
Absolutely. Lori's so inspirational. That's why I love to joke with her and tell her one day when I grow up, I want to be just like her. And she's so sweet. Her little cheeks get red and she gets shy. And I will get her to be talking on a video one day. One day it's going to happen. But yeah, I think it's very inspirational. And I know that, us being able to lead and guide our agents the way that we do has been tremendously beneficial for them. And the success stories that, I've seen since being in this management position and working under you and Lori is, agents coming over and watching them grow so quickly within such a short amount of time of being with us, just because of the doors that we're able to open for them, or the exposure they're able to get by being with us and, being with our brand and doing open houses, even at the amazing listings that we have. Agents starting out 3 months licensed and they're doing an open house, picking up $5.5 million buyers as, one of their second transactions in their license career. That's just, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's really rewarding. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons that Lori and I are still doing it. I mean, we're at a stage in our career where we've had a fair amount of success, and the fun of being able to pay it forward a little bit is a lot of it. It's really rewarding, as you're experiencing with some of the crew that you've been mentoring, that being able to bring somebody in and try to convey to them how much of a difference you might be able to make. I think it's a very rewarding thing to actually do it and watch somebody double their business, triple their business. It can be life-changing for their families. So
Yeah.
that's a fun part for sure.
It is. It's very rewarding. But I think the neat thing that you guys have created with our environment is it's not corporate feeling. And that's, one of the third sentences I typically will say to people when talking about you guys is you look at us as human beings with hearts and souls, and you genuinely want us to win. And that's a really nice feeling. So I can't thank you enough for being those types of people, because you can work at companies where you just, you feel like you're just another, bump on the wall. And that's just not a nice feeling at all, because people need uplifted. As I said, not everybody has, the same drive, the same tenacity, and you are what you surround yourself with. And I've always been a firm believer of that. Early 20s, I wanted to hang out with people 40 and 45 years old that were so successful, because I just wanted to sponge and learn off of all of them. And so I know that that's what a lot of our agents have experienced being with us, is that you surround yourself around people that are bigger and doing more than you, and you're going to do more.
Well, and I think, having, worked in the corporate world at a fast growing company that then started to mature and become very procedural. And I've always had a little bit of a issue with authority, personally. And so I really loathe being overly procedural.
Yeah.
In this business, you have to be, because of the legal issues. So it's important that you do have processes and systems, but we try not to have these corporate edicts where, everybody has to do things exactly the same way and follow the same policies. And because it could be totally different in one market or another, it can be totally different with one client or another. And so I think you have to be sensitive to that. And that kind of goes back to having the long view is, knowing when you need some structure and when you have to let people kind of do what makes sense. And so, the first page of our policy manual would say, do what makes sense. So.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. So we just had our conference, our biggest conference yet, which was so awesome. I'm so, happy for you and Lori. I was sitting in that room and up on that stage, and just, our affiliates from big cities, Austin, Dallas, coming and joining us, our, president and vice president of Christie's, and just hearing how impressed everybody is with the group. And, I remember my first Christie's conference I went to, and I saying that I worked with you guys, and how everybody within the network really looks up to you and Lori as like you start something, you create, and it's neat. But that's obviously why you won Affiliate of the Year twice.
Well, we've really enjoyed it. It came at a period in our life where we could really get out and immerse ourselves. I mean, one of the things that's fantastic about Christie's is, they're in the best markets in the world. And so you develop these friendships with other people who are, really immersed in real estate, but yet you can go visit somebody in Bordeaux or Porto, Portugal, or South America, or wherever you're traveling. And we've tried to instill that in our agents. I think it's funny because we have agents now who we have avid skiers who I'll hear from one of the other owners that I think one of your agents was in my office in Aspen last week because I have a house brochure from Asheville in the front window.
Mm.
And so we've tried to teach them to get around and immerse yourself. And it comes in handy when a client asks you about, global reach and some of the, kind of more vague terms that get used in our industry. When you could personalize it in that way. I mean, I was in Bordeaux, France about 5 years ago, and I walked into their conference room in the middle of the vineyards in Saint-Emilion, and they had our Charlotte magazine sitting on their conference room table. So when somebody came into there to have a meeting and wanted to leaf through something, they're looking at houses in Charlotte, North Carolina, because we have that relationship. And to me, that's the magic of the global network. It is that optimal reach.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it really is. It's a very powerful, incredible network to be a part of. So back to our conference we had last week, and you and Gavin Schwartzman, our president of Christie's, and Romeo from Texas, and Alex from Aspen speaking. It was nice to kind of hear your 4 point of views on this, merger and everything that's been going on in the news. And I'm very excited about it because, as you know, I speak constantly about, I think there's power in numbers. And what would be your insight and thoughts on everything now?
Well, what I'm excited about is that I think having people in leadership positions that have huge levels of resources that are also, realtors and real estate backgrounds, so they understand what's going on the street and that they're agent centric. And so I think they kind of have that same attitude that, you have to be hyper local, but you also need access to tools and resources. And so I think it's kind of the best of both worlds, being able to be locally owned and really immersed and entrenched in the markets that we're in here in North Carolina, but yet have enormous financial resources to develop tech tools and be provided with different things. We've got a couple of new programs coming out through the parent licensing company that we're going to be able to provide clients with more resources to help remodel their homes or access to private exclusives. And, that's a whole additional topic that's being tossed around. And I think the thing about people that want to sell their home off the market is, people have reasons for doing that. I think,
Yeah.
Sometimes there are privacy issues. Sometimes there are security issues. Maybe there's a divorce or a personal issue that's going on. And so they want to be able to sell their home privately. And, you could sell just about anything else privately, but in our world, you're supposed to have to route it through the MLS. And the other thing I would say is that the MLSs have not always done a great job training agents in how to qualify people that are going to look at, high-end properties. We probably screen out 90% of the inquiries that we get
Oh,
to
I'm
see
like an
listings,
FBI agent
you
every
know.
day.
And so having tools like that for an agent, when we've had criminals, we had people who've just gotten out of jail try to get into houses. And, some of them are fraudsters who have really good, spin that an agent can fall for if they don't have somebody helping them with the red flags to look for. And so I think those are some of the things you get with, the resources that we have access to.
Yeah, I agree. I'm very excited for the future with the growth and everything and all the emerging companies coming together. I think it's incredible. Yeah, for sure. We'll start summing up, what our future looks like. I'm so excited for the growth still to come in North Carolina for us as a company. And, I again just want to thank you and Lori for everything that you guys have done for all of us, me personally, all of our agents, across the board. I know everybody would be with me on that one. And I can't thank you enough for being here today with us. I know it's such great insight for, agents to hear this podcast and hear your insight as a very successful owner in the Charlotte area and in North Carolina. So thank you so much. So Reed Jackson can be found at Reed Jackson 1 on Instagram. He's becoming quite the Instagrammer lately too, which I'm very proud of him for. I can be found at Liza Caminiti Real Estate, and you can follow us and find us. We have multiple social media platforms. Every one of our offices at Ivester Jackson has their own social media platform. We have so many offices, as you learned, from the coast to the North Carolina mountains. And our website is www.ivesterjackson.com. So stay tuned for all the amazing things that we have coming up. And we will be very excited to see you on episode 3.